Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things, which unfortunately is going to start a little bit later into the painting than expected because my phone decided it didn't want to record what I had recorded, so I'm a bit bummed out about that, and we're going to start a little bit into the painting process. But not to worry, because this stuff so far is all nice and simple. We've got here one of the Imperial Knights, and this kit, I love it to bits. I've actually had this fella assembled and sprayed silver for the better part of a year. But August having been a bit of a bust, I thought it would be fun to let's grab a big ass model and we'll finish it. We'll just go ahead and do something to finish off August with something a bit cool. So at the moment, this doesn't look much like a knight. You'll see the bits are all off of it. But I wanted to use this as an opportunity to illustrate a point in how we're going to paint him, which is these armor plates. If I pick one of these up, we've got here one of the shoulder pads. Let's get a closer look there. If you look on the back, it's got this little recessed area. Actually, the carapace is probably a better place to show this off. We've got these 6 little divots, all right, either side, and they correspond to these 6 points on our knight. Let's call it the frame. So all we're going to do is once everything is assembled and you've got your undersuit, the frame itself painted, just a little bit of super glue on those pegs, and that will fit perfectly well. Okay. Now I'm probably not going to paint these. Come on, buddy. Completely separately. I've gone and stuck that on, have I? Oh dear. But the point being, you can use this, there we go, to paint the suit, the actual frame of the machine, silver, do it nice and quick, and we'll spray these a different color. Now ordinarily you don't have to spray them black before you spray them the color that you want them to be, but I've done that just to help illustrate that point. Same too, the weapons themselves, you can either glue these on or leave them off. I've left them off to facilitate painting. But all I've done so far, and this is why I'm a little annoyed this didn't record properly, but all it is, this is a straight spray of lead belcher. I've gone over that a couple of times, just very lightly to make sure I'm not going to foul anything up. Then I've used some Balthazar gold to just pick out a few little areas that I want some visual interest. I haven't done much of this on the front because we're going to see most of the armor plates are going to be on the front. On the back, though, there is a little bit more, and you can pick out what areas you want these to be on your own knight. Okay. Same too on the weapons. Don't forget to give them a little bit of that Balthazar gold. I haven't done very much on the power fist thingy at all, to be honest, but I quite like how that's going to look. I've then done a little bit of Retributor armor, just there's some Aquillas. That's all. All right. I haven't gone over it again with lead belcher, anything like that. So that's the hard part done. It's not really. But the frame itself is going to be incredibly simple. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to pose these arms, and then I am going to glue the pivoty bits in place. Because, as cool as it is to be able to pose them, I don't think it's going to add a huge amount on the battlefield, and it's going to be a pain in the butt to paint, perfectly honest. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to glue these, I'll super glue these, and then we'll get on to the next step. Now, while those two components are drying, we've got here Nuln Oil, Gloss, and Agrax Earthshade. Now, because I don't want to put the Earthshade over and dull that gloss effect, we're going to do the Earthshade first, because I want a really deep, dark metallic finish. All right, we are going to dry brush it later with some Necron compound to bring it back up, but I want it to be nice and deep. So let's give Agrax Earthshade a good shake. Get your hands on the biggest brush you own. All right, maybe not, but yeah, I've been wanting to. All right, grab yourself a large shade brush or something equivalent to this. All right, all you need is a nice big brush that's going to hold plenty of our friend Agrax Earthshade. And there's no great technique to this. Keeping this guy in shot is a real pain in the neck. So what we're going to do is just straight away start dunking this on the model. And this is going to take some time. So what we'll do is we'll skip ahead. Now, after approximately 1 million years, this is what you're going to have. Now, I'll be honest with you, this pot was full when I got started, and you'll see we've gone down, oh, that's at least 1/3 of a pot of Agrax Earthshade, so be prepared. You might want to turn around, look at alternatives. I know there are suggestions for how you can make your own here on YouTube, but if you do want to stick to Citadel stuff because you want to be able to color match perfectly, just be prepared. Okay, think ahead. You're probably going to need a fresh pot of each of these. Now, what I'm going to do next is go over the top with non-oil gloss, and I'm going to use this for 2 reasons. One is that I do want the slight shine in the recesses of all of the model. I want this to be crisp metal. Yeah, it looks like it's been maintained. The Agrax Earthshade has given it that slightly worn appearance, which I like, but I want it to look as though it's looked after. So non-oil, that glossiness is going to help us out there. Second of all, it also dries slightly differently, and it will pull differently to the Agrax Earthshade. It will run naturally towards the recesses, even better than Agrax Earthshade does without the gloss. So, job's a good one. Now this took, on the subject of drying, what I would not suggest would be to go into the bathroom, for example, or anywhere that you can get a hairdryer and hold this under a hairdryer. I would strenuously recommend against that. Because, you know, in the event you had gone mad and you decided that was a good idea, what happens is that the actual material in the shade will sort of dry off before it's had a chance to spread out, and you will get these kludgy, gloggy areas that might look something like that. Now, I'd have no idea what they look like because I would never have done something so silly, but just, you know, be aware for your own use at home. You don't want to do that. So, I'm now going to do exactly the same thing over the top with non-oil gloss. I would recommend, if you've got the time, set it aside and do each of these stages to let them dry overnight. That will give you plenty of time. But needs must. Let's crack on and see what this looks like through the magic of television. Now, once that layer's dried, you might notice I've actually not done as much of it as I thought I was going to. I've put a little on his face, and I decided it might look cooler if I put just this oily appearance to areas that moved a lot. So on his gun, on his fingers, and, you know, I didn't really see so much of a difference. So ultimately, you know, you might want to stop at the Agrax Earthshade, or you might want to substitute that entirely for non-oil, whether glossy or not. That's up to you. But I decided not to go crazy. What I'm going to do now, though, is since that's had plenty of time to dry, let's get the arms off, and we're going to dry brush the whole thing with some Necron compound. Now, this is nice and simple. All right, grab yourself a big old dry brush. I'm using a large dry brush, funnily enough. A little bit of Necron compound, and just work it into your bristles on some kitchen towel. And then pick somewhere you're not going to see a lot of. Let's do across the old top here. Yeah, that'll build up nice. So let's start just back and forth across the face a few times. And we'll start to see how it picks out the edges and we get that real nice shine. So, here comes the fun part. I'm going to go around this whole bleeding model with my Necron compound and my large dry brush, and I am going to brighten up all of the metal again. So, this might take a little while. We'll come back and we'll see what it looks like when I'm done. Whenever that is. Now, with that dry brush done, you can use that to bring up quite a bit of colour. And I really think that it looks a lot better, you know, once it's got that shining element to it. Now, this still doesn't look like much, which is a real shame because it looks way cooler in person. But there is so much to do on these guys, so let's crack on. Now, there isn't actually a lot more that I'm going to do with the frame. except for there are a lot of little cables you'll see running everywhere on this model. You know, there are some that are running into armoured containers and so forth. Now, there are two kinds. Some of them will have this sort of armoured sheathing on the outside, whereas some of the smaller ones will just be this little rubberized sort of style stuff. And that's what I want to try and replicate. For the most part, I'm going to leave these ordinary cables. If they're armoured, I'm going to leave them armoured. I'm just going to leave them silver. You might want to paint them something different. That's up to you, but for the sake of getting this guy finished, I'm going to skip them over. Maybe hit them with a shade later if I want them to look a little different. But for these guys, I'm going to go with corn red. Now, you might want to do something else, like a Eshin grey, for example, if you want a deep sort of mechanical grey. But for these guys, I want that sort of rubbery effect. So all I'm going to do is corn red, just a little bit of water, okay? I'm not going to bother too much with these. Just enough to get a little bit of colour onto the model in areas where it might normally be lacking. So let's just a little bit of water off to the side, and then, I mean, you see how easy this is. So I'm going to go around now, and I'm going to fill in all of these rubberized cables with my corn red. Now, as with a lot of the sort of extra details, you're not going to see much of this from the front. You know, there's only a couple of cables visible there, but because we have far less armor plating on the rear of it, you'll see a few more of these cables lurking around and just hanging out. And I think they add just a little without being a whole lot of extra work. So there's really only one last step that I'm going to get to before we carry on with the exciting stuff and we get to the armor on the front. And that is going to be to grab some white scar and some Hexwraith flame. Now I'm using this because I want green eyes. My fella's going to have a red faceplate, so I really want something that's going to shine out from there. You could, if you wanted to, either use a green glaze or a blue one if you wanted. It's entirely down to, what is the noble that you're painting going to look like. But for me, let's grab a medium layer brush and get a little bit of white scar. Now, I may have mentioned how difficult this actually is to get this guy on camera, so I'm going to take a second here just to show, we'll fill in the eyes, and then I'm going to finish the rest of these off screen. Now, with our lad's eyes painted in white, let's grab Hexwraith Flame, give it a good shake before you use it, because this has got a slightly sort of glutinous, gelatinous feel to it. And I'm going to paint mostly around the outside so that the sort of glowy stuff collects at the ring, where we leave that nice bright whiteness in the center. Easy as that. Now with that done, that's honestly most of this frame finished. Like I said, I've deliberately been quite plain with it. I don't want to spend forever on this thing. But what we'll do now is put the arms on. And we're going to do the fun stuff. Because I have here all of the parts I'm going to need, which I've sprayed in 3 different colours. I've gone for House Hawkshroud, so their armour tends to be yellow. So I've used Avalanche Sunset to yellow up all these armour plates. Some of them obviously are going to be coloured, there's Imperial Heraldry and what have you to consider. But for the actual base of what we're doing, this works perfectly well. All right. So, as I was mentioning, if we look on behind them, each of these has these little divots, which correspond to a lovely point here on the model. So we've got these 3 little dip, and that will match in. You probably can't see that very well at all, to be honest. But you see how they'll correspond with the parts. So, moment of truth. Now, I think that it's going to be easier to paint these big chunky bits if I've got them on the model. I was humming and hawing about this, whether or not I was going to try and paint them all separately, but I think for the ability to pick up stuff by the base, it's going to be more useful to me to have these attached to the model already. So let's get a little bit of super glue, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots, and then we'll line that up. There we go. line that up there and push it gently into place. Sorry, I'm doing this off screen just because I really want to make sure it is straight and correct. And the first armor plate actually glued into place. Oh, this is going to be fun. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Now, when I was talking about these bigger plates on the weapons being stuck to the model, there are a couple of pieces which do fit on, and I'm going to need to paint the actual shield itself in yellow. Avalanche Sunset later. But we'll put these armor plates on first anyway, because I think that's going to be much easier. So let's see how this sucker looks with his armor on. Now, what a difference that makes. Well, I've been looking forward to this. Like I said, I've had this guy together for a year, and only now is he finally getting some love. Oh, this is going to be so cool. Like I said, you can see I've sprayed these in different spray colors depending on what I'm going to be doing. And I've deliberately sprayed this shoulder pad white because it is going to be white and black. You will always find it easier to paint over a lighter color. So, because obviously black is darker than white, if you can believe that, we'll paint in the black area first on this shoulder pad. And on this one, there's going to be black too. Same too, if you were going to be doing yellow and red over here, you would spray with yellow, then paint the red over it. Whatever, you happen to be doing. Now, all of these trim are going to be silver. Sorry, not yellow. They're going to be silver. And I think it's going to be a lot easier to paint with them attached. If it's not, that's a shame because they are good and stuck on now. Now, a quick point, don't make the same mistake I did. These arms have to be on before you glue the shoulder pads in place. If you put the shoulder pads on and then you're trying to glue the arm on afterwards, you're going to have a bad time. I had to pull this one off, but shh, tell nobody, I made no mistakes. Now that concludes today's look at the knight. Tomorrow we're going to come back and we're going to do all of the detailing and finish him off. We'll get him on his base, all nice and painted up, and we're going to make him look the business. Now I don't have any Househawk Shroud decals at the moment, so his heraldry is going to be missing from the finished product. I just want to let you guys know that straight away. But for the actual purposes of painting, you see how easy this can be. So, as ever guys, thank you very much for your time. I hope something there was useful to you, maybe in assembly or in the steps that we've taken to get to this stage. I'll see you tomorrow with part 2 of our knight painting